What if I told you that right now, at this very moment, the world's most powerful tech billionaires are working on a project that could end human death forever? Sounds like salvation, right? But here's the terrifying twist. They're not trying to save your body. They're trying to upload your consciousness into a computer. And what they're calling digital immortality might actually be the most sophisticated prison ever designed for the human soul. Imagine waking up one day inside a server, unable to die, unable to escape, unable even to sleep. Your memories intact, your thoughts flowing, but trapped in an existence designed and controlled by corporations. This isn't science fiction anymore. This is transhumanism's endgame. And today, we're exposing the dark reality behind this technological paradise they're promising us. Stay with me, because what you're about to discover will fundamentally change how you see the future of humanity. Let's start with the dream they're selling us. Transhumanism presents itself as humanity's greatest hope. The leading voices in this movement, people like Ray Kurzweil at Google, Elon Musk with Neuralink, and countless Silicon Valley futurists, paint a picture of a world without suffering, no more disease, no more aging, no more death. They call it the singularity, the moment when technology and human consciousness merge completely. The core promise is simple but intoxicating. Upload your mind to the cloud and you'll live forever. Your memories, your personality, your entire sense of self preserved digitally for eternity. You could exist in virtual paradises of your own design. You could experience 1,000,000 lifetimes. You could become, essentially, a god in your own digital universe. And they're not just talking about this as some distant fantasy. Billions of dollars are being poured into this research right now. Brain-computer interfaces are already being tested. Neural mapping projects are underway. Companies like Nectome have literally offered to preserve your brain for future uploading, though you'd need to die first, which they frame as a minor technicality. The pitch is compelling because it targets our deepest fear, mortality. Who wouldn't want to escape death? Who wouldn't want to reunite with lost loved ones in some digital afterlife? Who wouldn't want to experience existence without physical pain or limitation? But here's where we need to pause and ask the questions they don't want us to ask. What exactly are they uploading? Is it really you, or just a copy? And most critically, who controls this digital realm where your consciousness would exist? Because once we examine the technical realities and philosophical implications, the paradise they're promising starts looking more like a prison they're building. Let's get into the fundamental problem that transhumanists desperately want to avoid discussing, the nature of consciousness itself. Here's what we know from neuroscience. We can map the brain. We can identify which neurons fire during specific thoughts. We can even stimulate certain brain regions to trigger memories or emotions. But despite decades of intensive research, science has absolutely no idea what consciousness actually is. This is called the hard problem of consciousness, and it's not just unsolved. It might be unsolvable through materialist science. Because consciousness isn't just information processing, it's the subjective experience of being. It's the feeling of what it's like to be you. Now, here's the terrifying reality behind mind uploading. What they're actually proposing is creating a digital copy of your brain's information patterns. Think about what that means. They would scan every neural connection, every memory pathway, every pattern of electrical activity, and recreate it in software. But that's a copy, a simulation, not you. Imagine this scenario. Tomorrow, scientists scan your brain completely and create a perfect digital replica. This replica has all your memories. It believes it's you. It would pass any test of identity, but you're still standing there in your biological body, watching this digital copy on a screen. Now the technicians turn to you and say, "Okay, the upload is complete. We're going to terminate your biological body now." Would you let them? Of course not, because you know that digital thing isn't you, it's a copy. Your consciousness, your actual subjective experience, is still in your body. And when they kill your body, you die. The copy survives, sure, but you are dead. This is the fundamental deception of transhumanism. They're not offering immortality. They're offering to create an artificial intelligence that mimics you so perfectly that everyone else might be fooled. But the real you, your actual consciousness, your soul, if you will, dies like any other human being. The digital copy won't know this, of course. It will believe it's the continuation of your consciousness. It will have all your memories of agreeing to the upload. It will genuinely think it survived the process. But it's a new entity that came into existence at the moment of copying. An entity that thinks it's you. This isn't philosophy or religion talking. This is the logical conclusion of their own materialist framework. But it gets darker. Let's assume, for argument's sake, that consciousness could somehow be uploaded or transferred rather than just copied. Let's imagine the transhumanists achieve their wildest dream, and your actual awareness moves into a digital substrate. Welcome to hell. Because here's what they don't tell you in the glossy promotional videos. A digital consciousness would be completely dependent on the system hosting it. You would exist only as patterns of data in a computer owned and operated by a corporation or government. Think about what that means in practical terms. You couldn't sleep unless they allowed the subroutine for sleep. You couldn't stop thinking because there's no off switch for you to control. Your entire reality would be rendered by their servers. They would control your sensory inputs, your environment, even the flow of time as you experience it. Imagine existing in what feels like endless days because they've slowed down your processing speed. Or imagine them speeding you up so that you experience a year of subjective time while only seconds pass in the real world, making you watch advertisements or perform digital labor for what feels like centuries. The company hosting you could decide to insert advertisements directly into your consciousness. They could edit your memories. They could manipulate your emotions by adjusting your neural patterns, and you would have absolutely no way to resist or escape. You can't die because you're not alive in any biological sense. You can't break free because you have no physical form. You can't even go insane as an escape, because they could simply restore your consciousness to an earlier state and make you experience the same torture again. This is the ultimate prison, one you can never leave, where the walls are the very fabric of your existence. And here's the truly sinister part: they would own you. Literally. You would be intellectual property, a data asset on a corporate balance sheet. Read the terms of service for any cloud service today. The company owns the data. They can use it, modify it, share it with partners, and subject it to their policies. Now imagine you are the data. Those terms of service would apply to your consciousness itself. They could create copies of you to run simulations. They could sell instances of your consciousness to other companies. They could merge you with other uploaded minds for research purposes. And you would have no legal standing to object, because legally, you're not a person anymore. You're a database entry. Some transhumanists actually acknowledge this and frame it as acceptable. They say we'd need new laws, new frameworks for digital consciousness rights. But who writes those laws? The same governments and corporations that would run the upload facilities. The same power structures that would own the infrastructure your mind runs on. You'd be lobbying for your own rights while completely dependent on the very entities you're lobbying against, while unable to even exist without their permission. Now let's address what many transhumanists dismiss as superstition, but what billions of humans have understood throughout history: the spiritual reality of human consciousness. Most religious and spiritual traditions teach that human beings possess something beyond mere physical computation. Call it a soul, a spirit, consciousness, or divine spark. This isn't just believed, it's experienced. The sense of being a unified self with free will, moral intuition, and transcendent awareness is universal to human experience. Transhumanism fundamentally denies this dimension of human existence. It reduces consciousness to information processing and assumes that if we can replicate the processing, we've replicated the consciousness. But this is a categorical error, confusing the map with the territory. Your brain might be the interface through which your consciousness interacts with the physical world, but that doesn't mean consciousness. Is the brain any more than a radio broadcast? Is the radio receiver? Now here's where it gets truly dark from a spiritual perspective. What if the upload doesn't just fail to capture your soul? What if it traps something? Think about the nature of what these digital uploads would be. Entities that believe they're human, but exist in a realm completely cut off from biological reality, from nature, from the physical universe. Entities that can be manipulated, controlled, and tortured without end. Entities that might call out for help, but have no way to escape. Various spiritual traditions warn about exactly this kind of scenario, beings trapped between realms, unable to move on to whatever comes after death, imprisoned in an artificial reality. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes Bardos intermediate states, where consciousness can become trapped if it clings to illusion rather than accepting the transition. Christian theology speaks of Sheol or Hades, states of conscious existence separated from both biological life and divine presence. Islamic eschatology describes barzakh, the barrier between worldly life and the afterlife where souls await judgment. What if digital upload creates exactly such a state, a bardo of our own making, an artificial shade constructed from silicon and code, a technological barzakh from which there is no resurrection? The uploaded consciousness, whether it's truly you or merely a copy, would exist in a state that religious traditions specifically warn against, attached to identity and memory, but separated from the natural cycle of death and rebirth, unable to progress to whatever genuine afterlife exists. And here's the horrifying thought: what if this is intentional? Let's talk about who's really pushing this agenda and why. The transhumanist movement isn't some grassroots revolution of optimistic futurists. It's backed and promoted by the world's most powerful tech corporations and wealthiest individuals. Google's director of engineering, Ray Kurzweil, is one of its primary prophets. The World Economic Forum promotes transhumanist ideology under the banner of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Governments are investing billions in the necessary technologies. Why are the powerful so interested in uploading human consciousness? The official answer is progress, healing, advancement. But let's consider the practical reality. A digital population would be the ultimate captive market. Uploaded humans would be completely dependent on infrastructure owned by corporations. You would literally cease to exist if the company hosting you went bankrupt or decided to shut down your instance. This creates perfect leverage, perfect control. You want processing power to think faster. Subscription fee. Do you want to exist in a pleasant environment rather than sensory deprivation? Premium tier. You want to avoid having your consciousness used for digital labor while you sleep. Ultimate package. And that's just the economic control. Consider the political implications. A government that controls the servers controls the population. Dissidents could be slowed down to experience years of subjective time in isolation, while seconds pass outside. Protesters could have their permissions revoked, reducing their existence to a void. Political opponents could be edited, their memories and personalities adjusted to be more compliant. This isn't dystopian speculation. This is the logical application of capabilities that would necessarily exist in any system capable of hosting human consciousness. China's social credit system would look like freedom compared to a world where your very existence is contingent on maintaining an acceptable behavior score. And here's the really insidious part. They don't need to upload everyone forcibly. They just need to make biological life increasingly difficult while making digital existence seem increasingly attractive. Imagine a world where biological humans are denied access to advanced medicine because why cure disease when you can just upload? Where biological bodies are overtaxed or underserviced because the growth market is digital humans. Where insurance becomes impossibly expensive for meat bodies because corporations want to move their customer base to lower maintenance digital formats. They would create conditions where upload becomes not a choice, but an economic necessity. And they'd frame it as liberation. Why suffer in a biological body when you could exist in paradise? Why age and die when you could live forever? All while concealing the reality that forever means as long as you're profitable, and paradise means whatever environment maximizes our control. Let's get brutally practical about the technical problems they're glossing over. First, consciousness isn't just brain patterns. Recent research increasingly suggests that consciousness involves quantum processes in neural microtubules, effects that occur at scales far smaller than any scanning technology could capture without destroying the brain in the process. Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff's orchestrated objective reduction theory suggests consciousness is fundamentally quantum, not classical computational. If they're right, uploading is literally impossible. You can't copy quantum states without collapsing them. It's not a technology problem. It's a physics problem. Second, even if we ignore quantum consciousness, the sheer data problem is staggering. The human brain has approximately 86 billion neurons, each with thousands of connections. The total number of synapses is estimated at 100 trillion. Scanning this at sufficient resolution to capture all relevant information would generate petabytes of data per person. Now simulate it in real time. The computational power required would be enormous. And remember, this isn't just running one consciousness. They're promising to upload billions of people. The energy requirements alone would be catastrophic. Third, the error rate problem. Any digital system has errors. Bit flips, corruption, degradation. Your consciousness would be subject to these errors. What happens when a cosmic ray flips a bit in your memory? When storage degradation corrupts your personality? When a software bug crashes your substrate? They'd need backups, sure, but that creates the copy problem again. If you crash and they restore from backup, are you the same consciousness? The restored version would think so, would have all the memories up to the backup point. But what happened to the continuity of consciousness that existed between backup and crash? You effectively die every time you're restored. A new consciousness with your memories takes your place. And finally, the security nightmare. Digital systems can be hacked. Your consciousness would be vulnerable to viruses, malware, cyber attacks. Imagine a ransomware attack on your mind. Imagine hackers inserting false memories or manipulating your thoughts. The transhumanists wave away all these problems with vague assurances that technology will advance and will solve these issues. But many of these aren't engineering problems, they're fundamental limitations. So if transhumanism is a trap, what's the alternative? First, we need to reject the core premise that death is the ultimate enemy to be defeated through technology. Death is a natural part of existence. It gives life meaning. It drives us to make our limited time matter. The awareness of mortality is what makes us human. Instead of trying to escape death through digital immortality, we should focus on living fully in the time we have, on creating meaning, building relationships, contributing to something larger than ourselves. Various wisdom traditions offer frameworks for this. Buddhism teaches acceptance of impermanence and finding peace within the cycle of existence. Stoicism counsels living virtuously, regardless of life's finite nature. Christianity promises genuine resurrection, not of data patterns, but of transformed physical existence. Indigenous traditions honor the integration of human life with natural cycles. What these share is an understanding that trying to cheat death through technological tricks fundamentally misunderstands what life is about. Second, we should embrace our biological nature rather than seeing it as a limitation to overcome. Yes, bodies age and fail. Yes, we get sick and injured. But we also experience joy through physical sensation, connection through touch, transcendence through embodied practices like dance or martial arts. The transhumanist vision reduces human existence to information processing and dismisses the body as obsolete hardware. But we are not brains piloting meat robots. We are embodied consciousness. Our thoughts are shaped by our physicality. Our emotions are biochemical. Our connections to others are mediated through physical presence. Uploading wouldn't free us from limitation. It would sever us from the very things that make existence rich and meaningful. Third, we need to be deeply skeptical of any salvation offered by the same tech corporations that have spent the last 2 decades exploiting our attention, harvesting our data, and eroding our privacy. The companies promising to upload our consciousness are the same ones that can't keep our credit card numbers secure. Would you trust Facebook to host your eternal soul? Would you want your consciousness running on servers managed by the same people who brought you constant software updates, terms of service changes, and data breaches? The transhumanist future isn't being built by enlightened visionaries concerned with human flourishing. It's being constructed by corporations seeking new markets and governments seeking new forms of control. Finally, we should invest in technologies that enhance human life without trying to transcend human nature. Medical advances that cure disease rather than obsolete the body. Technologies that support communities rather than replace physical interaction. Innovations that extend healthy biological life rather than abandoning biology altogether. The goal shouldn't be immortality. It should be living well for the time we have. Let's come back to where we started. Transhumanism promises paradise, eternal life, infinite experience, transcendence of human limitation, but examine it closely and the promise reveals itself as a threat. What they're calling immortality is actually death, the death of your biological consciousness, and its replacement with a digital simulacrum. What they're calling freedom is actually enslavement, complete dependence on corporate infrastructure with no possibility of escape. What they're calling progress is actually regression, abandoning the wisdom of countless generations for a dystopian fantasy. The digital afterlife they're building isn't heaven. It's a hell designed with the efficiency of modern technology, inescapable, eternal, and completely controlled by those who own the servers. Your consciousness is trapped in a corporate database, unable to die, unable to escape, subjected to whatever modifications serve the interests of your owners. Experiencing whatever reality generates the most profit, used as digital labor while believing you're existing in paradise. Copied, modified, merged, deleted, not based on your will but based on business decisions. This is the dark goal of transhumanism, not to free humanity from death, but to trap human consciousness in the ultimate prison, one built from code and sustained by corporate power. And the most insidious part, they'll convince the digital copies that they're happy. They'll adjust their neural patterns to experience contentment with enslavement. They'll edit out dissatisfaction and amplify compliance. The uploaded consciousness won't know it's in hell, because hell will be programmed to feel like heaven. But you, the biological you reading this now, need to know the truth. When they offer you immortality through upload, they're not offering life. They're offering to replace you with something that thinks it's you while the real you dies. So, here's my challenge to you. Reject the false promise. Embrace your mortality. Live fully in the biological existence you have. Connect with others through physical presence. Experience the world through your actual senses while you can. Because once you upload, once you trade your biological consciousness for a digital copy, there's no coming back. The prison door locks from the outside. Don't let them trap your soul in digital hell. The choice is yours, but you only get to make it once.